Andy Penn, good morning.
Good morning, Neil. Great to be here this morning.
Well, thank you for coming in. I think the share price closed about 276, which is about 40% down on a year. Last week was a 7-year low. What are you going to do to fix it?
Well, look, there's no doubt that the telecommunications sector is going through a very challenging time at the moment. I think a combination of the reality of the NBN and increased competition has certainly put pressure on all telcos. So, we've got a number of initiatives in play that we think will help respond to that pressure, and we've got some announcements which we're making at the end of June that I think will respond to some shareholder questions. But I think the broader point is that there's never been greater demand for telecommunications products and services, but right now we're probably seeing some of the most challenging competitive dynamics that the market's seen for some time.
You've been talking about a new strategy. That's what you're announcing at the end of the month, is it?
Yes, that's right, Neil.
Okay. Well, is it likely to mean cuts?
Well, look, I think ultimately it's going to mean a number of things. The main emphasis is how do we actually transform the nature of telecommunications products and services for customers in the future. But yes, we will also have to achieve productivity and improve further efficiencies, and ultimately, that does impact jobs.
Can you hold out any hope for shareholders on dividends? Because you've been the company that always paid dividends.
Yeah, no, look, we have a very clear dividend policy, but I mean, our ability to pay dividends is ultimately a function of our underlying earnings, and that's going to be a function of how the competitive dynamics play out.
You've been quoted as saying you need bolder action. What do you mean?
Well, I think that the point is that I think the market's got to a bit of a tipping point in terms of the competitive dynamics, and you get to those points, and when you have to take a more radical step in the market. And I don't want to sort of preempt what we'll be saying at the end of June, because we'll be going into a bit more detail then. But I think we are at that point where we need to be more prepared, to be more ambitious. That brings about increased risk as well, but I think increased benefit for customers.
If you cut costs, if you seek more productivity, can you do that without affecting service?
Well, I think that's the crucial point. So that's where I was sort of going with my point about, redefining telecommunications products and services, because I know, and you mentioned in your introduction, that there are many of your customers that have got all sorts of frustrations with telcos, with Telstra, with other telecommunications companies, at the same time as connectivity and that core telco service is more important to them today than it's ever been. And so I think that it's beholden on us and the rest of the industry to tackle some of those issues head on, which I think will also improve service experience and then reduce the number of calls coming into our call centres and the number of reworks that we have to do in the business, which will then lead to lower costs as well.
Is there a danger of going offshore further?
No, not particularly. I don't know. That's not a central thing.
That's something that really irritates people, I know, at various levels.
I mean, we do have offshore support centres and we have onshore people as well, but that's not in the mix to change that in any substantial way.
Do you set a target on your share price and think we've got to double it or we've got to get back to this level or something?
No, look, I mean, my thought on share prices is, look, they can be affected by many, many things. The most important thing is to do the right thing by your customers, implement the right strategy for the business, and ultimately the share price will look after itself.
The problems with some of the outages, and particularly the fire at Orange, has that damaged your standing, damaged the share price?
Oh, well, I don't know if it's damaged the share price. I mean, I think that, what it highlights is how important connectivity is today for everybody in the community. And so therefore, whenever there's any interruption, no matter how big or small, that's not a good thing. And so, we're obviously disappointed that that's happened. I mean, the bottom line is telecommunication networks are very, very large system of physical assets, so lots of fibre, lots of towers, exchanges, with a lot of technology as well. And from time to time, stuff happens, and what our job is to minimise the impact of that.